afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. This is webinar number 2 for the year, titled Ready, Set, Collect. The genesis of today's webinar actually came from the feedback we had from our webinar back in March, and based on the responses that we got back, everyone wanted to see some dialogue relative to best practices from a collections perspective. So today's going to be pretty interesting. We got a room full of people here today. We're going to do some polls on today's webinars. We're going to hear from a lot of different individuals. We're going to do some role playing. It's the first time we've done that, so that'll be very exciting. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. Chris, you want to show the next slide? So there's a question and answer text box that you should be able to see if you're viewing the webinar. If you have any questions, go ahead and put the question into the box. And what we did last time, which was pretty effective, is we had Judy respond to the majority of the questions as we were going. Any questions that she might hold back and answer at the end of the webinar as well. So we'll let Judy kind of filter through those questions as we go. If you're having any audio or visual video issues, go to webinar support. We'll be able to help you. Prior to today, or actually today, you probably would have received an email with a link which has the documents that you'll be able to view for today's webinar. So if you haven't seen your email, it should be sitting there for you to download. Our next webinar will probably be September 24th. That's a tentative date. So that could change. We don't have a topic yet, but if you give us your feedback relative to items that you'd like to hear, higher education topics that you want us to present, give us some feedback after the webinar. There's a poll they'll ask you as to any type of future presentations you want to see. With that being said, I'm going to do a couple of introductions. Again, I have a room full of people here. We're going to start off with Ms. Judy Flank, who I've previously introduced. Judy has 30 years of higher education administration experience. Before her quasi-retirement here, she was the executive director of the business office operations at the University of Illinois system. We've got Mr. Bert Coley here with us today. I'm sorry, we've got Brandon Peterson. Let's go to Brandon first. That's a different person. Brandon been with us for many years, 15 years in fact. Brandon started off as the collector, has been a top performer for us at ERS for many years in his collection role. Moved into middle-level management, and then most recently into senior-level management position, where he's the director of operations over our campus collection contact center. Brandon oversees 200-plus collectors, managers, supervisors, team leads, etc. He's our guy on the. Yeah, give it up for Brandon. Now we've got Bert Coley. Bert's got 25 years of ARM experience, receivables management experience. 10 years as a compliance director. He was compliance before compliance was cool, right? Absolutely. He oversees our corporate compliance group. We call it the CCG. His staff oversees the collection staff, making sure that they're adhering to local, state, and federal laws. And thanks to the CFPB, you have gainful employment for many years to come, don't you, Mr. Coley? All right. We've got Mr. Dean Cash in the room with us. Dean is one of our top performing Perkins Loan representatives with almost 15 years of experience. He's our go-to skip tracing expert. So thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us, Dean. We also have Joe Golars, also one of our top performing Perkins representatives with over 12 years of experience here at ERS. And we'll be glad when this webinar wraps up, he's going on vacation to Niagara Falls. So. Thanks for everyone that's joining us today, and we'll go ahead and get started. And Judy, I'll flip it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. The topic for today, as we've talked about, is Ready, Set, Collect. As Steve mentioned, just type your questions in as we go along, and the ones we can answer during the webinar we'll respond right away. We may hold a few to the end for some discussion. Also, as Steve mentioned, even during the webinar, if you think of topics you would like for us to put into the next 2 webinars, you can even just type those into the question bar and we'll track those. But it's really critical that we hear from you what you want the webinar content to be. And the last thing is, at the end, you will get a survey from us. we begin to formulate content for the next 2 webinars. We'll have a lot of great input from you. So thank you again for taking your time during your busy season. I know a lot of you may be working on your cohorts, and I wish you the best of luck with that. And we'll get started.
Okay, thank you, everybody. My name is Brandon Peterson, Director of Operations. I'm going to kick it off, kind of let you know what challenges we face in the collection industry, and turn it over to Bert, and you can elaborate on that. So, as most of you know out there, in 2010, the Dodd-Frank Act created the CFPB, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created in the aftermath of the financial collapse. Now, the CFPB has been working with the collection industry for over 3 years now, and in February of 2014, they concluded the advance notice of proposed rulemaking. This is where they solicited the help of the collection industry professionals, the ACA, and consumers to obtain a better understanding of our industry and the challenges we face. As of today, the collection industry eagerly awaits those final changes, which are coming soon. So, in lieu of those expected changes, we at ERS and most professional debt collection agencies have taken critical steps to ensure compliance. Therefore, it is imperative that each agency, from our standpoint, have detailed policies and procedures, a complaint management system, and collection scripts, which we'll get into in a few here. So, what I'll do now is turn it over to Bert Coley. He's our Director of Corporate Compliance. He comes to us with over 25 years of experience and many more in the compliance management. And Bert joins us today in detailing the challenges we are presently faced with and what we are doing to meet those challenges. So,
good afternoon, everyone. And I will piggyback on Brandon's statements about CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And since the advent of that governmental agency, the landscape for compliance in the financial services industry has changed dramatically. Some would say that it has become a toxic landscape in which to conduct business, but certainly significant changes for all of us. The purpose or the objective of developing that agency was just to increase government oversight for financial services. The agency assumes responsibility for supervision and enforcement of consumer protection laws, and something that's not mentioned here but is very important, they also have examination authority. So as they supervise, they have the ability to change the rules, create the rules, make the rules, and they can examine to those rules that they make change. And they also have the ability to fine or take punitive action against any entity that they have examined. Their primary objective is to protect consumers from unfair, deceptive, and abusive acts and practices. With that said, they have an overarching regulation called UDAP. Most of us are familiar with FDCPA, and we regard that as the overarching regulation for collections activity. But in the CFPB world, it's sort of moved over to UDAP. Everything, it is the umbrella for all of their activities, and everything falls under UDAP. And with that, with the regulatory activity that they oversee, they hold companies accountable for unfair, deceptive, abusive acts or practices when collecting debts or engaging in debt collection activity. And we're going to speak to some of those activities and the challenges we're within today. Again, UDAP, with being the overarching regulation, they endeavor to protect consumers and not cause them financial harm. And it is incumbent upon us, as we engage in collection activity, to not only follow the stated rules and regulations, but to ensure that borrowers understand what those rules and regulations are, and that they have all the information they need to make an informed decision when it comes to financial matters. What helps us to help you is for everyone to understand what the requirements are. So the first thing that we have to have in order for us to perform our collection activity is we have to have the right to collect the debt. We have to have validation documents. So that would be a student obligation document or a contract, billing statements, the original application, and the chain of custody of those documents. So we need to have the origination of the document all the way to the point where we've informed the borrower of this information with billing statements and how that information is relayed to the debt collection agency. All of that is very important and it's required by CFPB. Next, we would talk about true and correct financial and demographic records. It is very important that we can authenticate that we are collecting from the right party. The borrower's demographics are essential: Social Security number, date of birth, address, anything that speaks to us having the right person. Data integrity is critical to CFPB. Do we have the right balance? Do we have the transaction history? Do we know the history of that balance, how it came to be? And the original date of delinquency. A lot of our collection processes are built on the date of delinquency. So now we will move over and, expectations of our business partners, I'm sorry. So as we collect debts and consumers have questions or challenges with our right to collect this debt, which they often do, the most common complaint we have or dispute is that this is not my debt or this balance is incorrect. So in order for us to combat that, we need a full account history. We need to know the history of the challenges that the borrowers have made to this account. Has there ever been a lawsuit? Is there a complaint history? Have they ever been represented by an attorney? Have they ever filed a bankruptcy? Have they ever requested a cease or desist directive at their place of employment or at their residence? Or do they have any complaint? We need that information to appropriately approach the consumer in our collection activity. And timely responses to inquiries and documentation requests. We have rules for response. If it's a validation response and it's an initial validation, we have 30 days to respond them with original documentation stating that they owe the debt. If they file a complaint with CFPB directly, and it's important to know that the CFPB actively markets their complaint database. They ask consumers to file complaints for bad activity by debt collectors. And if you go to their website, you will see that. There's a lot of consumer education on how to file a complaint against a debt collector on their website. But it is critical. We have 10 days to respond to CFPB with any complaint that is filed. We have about the same amount of time with an attorney general as one is filed with an attorney general. For debt, if they file a dispute with the credit reporting agency, we have 30 days to respond. But that response has to be with original documentation, valid original documentation.
It's very important when you're contracting with collection agencies to be sure that they have a compliance person or a compliance office and that they're closely following all of the rules and regulations in the state that you're in, the federal laws, and now, as Bert talked about, the CFPB. So I really encourage you to engage in conversations with the collection agencies that you work with and find out what their policies and procedures are as it relates to compliance. And the other thing that Bert just talked about, which is really important, is that as an institution, we have to be very responsive to the requests that they make. So please be sure that you turn that documentation around as quickly as possible. And I would even encourage you to have a policy in place with your own team that you try and turn it around within 72 hours. I know a lot of times they may have 10 days, they may have 30 days, but there's also a number of things that as a collection agency they have to do with the documentation. So the earlier you get the documentation to them, the better. So,
Thank you, Judy.
Mhm.
So now we will get into demonstrating our collection scripts for all of you to have a better understanding of our interaction with your students. So as we get into the scripts, you'll hear Dean Cash start off as the collection specialist and Joe Golars as the student. Additionally, I myself, Brandon, will be providing commentary along the way. Quick note here, we are launching a poll for the audience, and the first question is, do you have a standard opening statement or script your collectors use when contacting students? So that question's out there for you all to answer, and we want to make this as interactive as possible, so feel free to chime in with questions as well throughout. So now we'll get in. Oh, I'm being told no.
yeah, no, hang on one sec. We have a question that I'd actually like Bert to talk about to the group. Can you expand on chain of custody?
Chain of custody. We originate the account with some type of document, presumably an application. That application is followed up with billing statements. And we also have, at some point, some type of document that indicates that this account has gone into default. And then the account may be transferred to a third party for collection activity. So that documentation has to follow from the credit originator to the third party collecting the account, and that may subsequently be transferred to another third party collection. So the original documentation has to follow that account from whatever location is engaging in the collection activity. So, and it is best covered with electronic documents. In fact, in the ideal situation, when the accounts are provided to the third party or the collection agency, providing an electronic file with the original documentation expedites all of our collection activity and our collection efforts. So that would be the ideal scenario.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we'll get into the collection scripts. And again, Dean will start off as the collection specialist, Joe will be the student, and I myself will be providing commentary along the way. So now, as we get into the scripts, it's very important that you have an opening statement, a script, which every agent must follow in order to keep things uniform across the board. This will mitigate risk, which every agent will be required to follow. So, Dean?
May I speak with John Smith?
Yeah, who is this?
Well, my name is Dean Cash. I must advise you that this call may be recorded or monitored. Are you John Smith?
Yes, I am John Smith.
Mr. Smith, for security purposes, can you verify that the last 4 digits of your Social Security number is 1234?
I'm not comfortable verifying that information with you.
Mr. Smith, I already have your information. I must confirm the last 4 digits of your Social Security number in order to proceed and disclose the nature of this call. Can you please confirm the last 4 digits of your Social Security number being 1234?
Yes, that's correct. What is this about?
Well, prior to disclosing anything further, I must confirm that I have the correct John Smith, who attended the University of Illinois. In order to move forward, I must also have you confirm your date of birth.
Note here, we require our agents to verify 2 forms of identification. The second piece must be volunteered by the student. Acceptable forms include date of birth or demographic information.
Yes, my date of birth is August 14th, 1980.
Thank you. My name is Dean Cash, and I am calling from Enterprise Recovery Systems. We are a collection agency contracted by the University of Illinois. I must inform you this communication is from a debt collector. This is an attempt to collect the debt, and any information obtained will be used for that purpose.
So at times the student may ask who you are and where you are calling from. It's important that you do not hesitate. You must tell them your full name, and if they ask where you're calling from or the name of the company, you should tell them Enterprise Recovery Systems, the full name of the corporation.
I am contacting you today in reference to your outstanding tuition balance with the University of Illinois. Your balance as of today is $2,000 and is presently in default and due in full. Are you in a position to resolve this balance in full today?
I am aware of this balance, but unfortunately, I cannot pay the balance in full today.
How much of the balance can you pay?
I received your letter. I was planning on calling you to make monthly payment arrangements. In addition, I never did attend those courses.
So as Joe stated here, he never attended the course. It's important that we address any objection that the student has, and then we go into full and complete information to obtain demographics and financial information so we can move forward. So, Dean?
Mr. Smith, it is your responsibility to ensure that all school policies and school deadlines are met in regards to proper withdrawal. You stated that your intention was to resolve the account through monthly payments. I am sure we can work out an arrangement which will accommodate you and our client. Prior to entering into a payment arrangement, I must ask you a few questions which may help me identify the best possible arrangement.
Well, I still need to verify that this is the correct balance. I received your letter, and everything you are telling me matches up. I will definitely resolve the account. However, I need to see an itemization statement from the school prior to entering into a repayment arrangement with you.
So at this point, all collections must cease and an itemization statement must be requested. Upon receipt of the itemization statement, collections may resume. That's why it's important to have a procedure in place to work with the agency that you contract to obtain that information as quickly as possible. So those requests go through our client relations department, who will then reach out to the school, the university or college, and we're waiting at that point for you all to provide it back. For those of you that do not have something in place like the University of Illinois where we can get that within 72 hours, feel free to reach out to your client relations representative and set something up with us or your agency, I would assume. So,
and in some cases, your agency can work with you and they can have electronic access to your student accounts, which means they can view them right on the screen as they're talking to the debtor or their student loan servicer. So you definitely want to have those conversations with your client rep, with whichever agency you work with, because that will expedite it. And as Bert brought up, it also helps with compliance issues because the information is there in a timely manner. They can answer the student's questions, or they can get on the phone with you as an institution and say, I'm looking at the screen, the student has questioned X, Y, and Z. They said they didn't live in housing, and then work with the student to possibly resolve it. Or the student had a serious illness, but unfortunately never went to the institution and processed the withdrawal papers for their medical situation. So the faster we can turn these documents around for the collection agency, the faster everything can be resolved, and then the stress with the student can be reduced, which is very important in a lot of situations.
absolutely. And for those of you that don't have a process set up, again, reach out to your client relations rep, and we can work on getting that process set up. Now, the call would have ended there as we awaited the documents. However, if Mr. Smith did not request an itemization and wanted to set up payment arrangements, this is where we get into asking for income and expense information to assist in determining the best possible arrangement. Note during this interaction with Dean and Joe here that we want to ask open-ended questions to allow the student to provide as much information as possible. Also, it's imperative that this information is well documented for future reference. Additionally, you should always ask for a list of major expenses first, as the student will be more forthcoming in providing income information. So, back to Dean.
So, Mr. Smith, what are your top 3 monthly expenses?
Well, my rent is $500, my car payment's about $250, and I pay about $75 a month for my cell phone bill.
Okay. Thank you for that information. What is the name of your current employer, and what is your position there?
I sell appliances at ABC Home Improvement.
And what is your monthly income?
It's roughly $1,400 a month.
Okay, Mr. Smith, based on your income and expenses, what are you proposing to pay on a monthly basis?
I would be able to pay $50 to $75 each month until the balance is satisfied.
Okay, let me place you on hold for just a moment so that I can review your account to determine what options are available. Can you please hold?
Sure.
So this is where we pause for 30 seconds to 1 minute and review the financials, determine the discretionary income, and work with the borrower to complete the best possible arrangement there. So back to you, Dean.
Okay, Mr. Smith, what we can do is set up a series of payments for the next 6 months of $75 as a temporary arrangement. We will have to revisit your financial situation after 6 consecutive monthly payments have been made. The hope is after 6 months your financial situation will improve and we can increase your monthly payments in an effort to resolve the balance in a timely fashion.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for working with me.
At this point, the collector will set up the payments and summarize the call. Dean, you want to close it?
Okay, Mr. Smith, just to confirm our arrangement, you agreed to set up payments for $75 on the 15th of each month for the next 6 months. 7 to 10 days prior to the date of the payment deduction, you will receive a reminder notice. Mr. Smith, thank you for your time, and feel free to call my office if you have any further questions or concerns.
Great. So that was a standard account receivable talk off. That was easier than most, must say. And so, you know, and it's all about the tone and inflection in your voice and working with the student. A lot of times when you're approaching a student over the phone or catching them at a bad time, it's all about your ability to listen and keep control of the situation and basically show empathy to the student and work things out voluntarily. So, you know, that's what I got. And what we'll get into now is some skip tracing, or looks like
I just want to backtrack 1 minute. From the poll results, it's interesting that a large percentage of the institutions don't have scripts for the collection team to use when they start off the conversation. And that's one thing I would really encourage you to establish in your collection processes. And an excellent resource for that, as you can tell, is the collection agencies that you use and your client reps at those agencies. A lot of the agencies have training that can be made available to you, and they can use the same technology we're using today, a webinar for your team, so they could talk with them about what are those important things to do when you first get on the phone. And as the gentleman that just did our role play showed you, listening to the borrower and working through with them, but having that standard script at the beginning, make sure that you as an institution stays in compliance and that you verified who the debtor is and you got all of that information. So just to summarize what we've heard, it's really important to use the standard script, and we showed you those on the slides. Work with your collection agencies to establish those scripts, and also reach out to them and ask them about doing some webinar training for you, or if it's nearby, I'm sure they would come on site and do training for you to help your team with their collection techniques. I'm going to turn it back to Brandon.
Thank you. Excuse me. So now what we'll do is get into some skip tracing. Dean Cash is our skip tracing guru. He's again been with us for many years now, and he's probably the best in the business at locating individuals through subscription websites as well as social media. So I do want to make note that it is important that your agency that you work with have a social media policy to ensure that you know, they're using that information that's provided in the public domain and not doing things unscrupulously. So Dean, if you want to go ahead and expound on that.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dean Cash, and today I'll be briefly discussing some skip tracing tools and techniques. Let me begin by saying that all the information discussed in this skip tracing segment and skip tracing that we perform here at ERS is all public information. At no time are we allowed to request someone as a friend on Facebook or search for anyone not related to the accounts that we have in our portfolio. And I've been asked to go to a quick poll question. I guess the poll question is, do you use social media to skip trace? Okay, so basically when you have an account, or if I have an account in front of me, I ask myself, well, what do I know about this student? Well, I know their name, I know the school that they attended. It's also important that you figure out where they have lived, what city and state they may have lived in the past. And then I would immediately go to basic internet searches on Yahoo or Google. And what I do there first is I type in the information that I want to see in quotations. It's imperative that you put the quotes around the data that you're looking for, or you will be searching for a long time. What you want to do is try to refine the search so that you are looking at information that you can manage, that you're not looking through hundreds of web pages online. So, for example, what I would do is put somebody's name in quotations, find out how many searches or how many hits come up with that data, and then right after the quotation mark, I would put in city, state, and possible school information, and I'll get into that in a little bit as well. In just a few minutes. But you also want to mix and match the information around the information that you're trying to search for, and I'll get into that in just a second. So if we can go to the next slide here, this is an example of what I would do in Yahoo or Google. If I'm looking for John Smith, I would put his name in quotes first, see how many hits I would get from that information, and then I would then go to the next step and put in city, state, name of the school is at the bottom there, any demographic, any other information that I may know about, whether if it was a nursing loan that I was collecting on. I would use specific information regarding social workers, LCSWs, if I know that they're in any kind of medical field. I would type in that information after the name. Also, we would get information regarding the employer on credit reports that we have to kind of see what information we can get from the internet from that point. So this is kind of an example of a Google search on Mr. John Smith. And as you can see, it comes up with a lot of information, 17 million hits, so we don't have time to go through all that data. So we would kind of refine the search after the quotation marks and put in city, state, school information, etc. So I guess what's important is to make sure that you put the quotation marks around the information to get the specific information that you want, and then narrow the search down with city, school, maybe where they grew up. And as far as Facebook is concerned, I'm going to kind of touch on that a little bit. I do have a lot of success with finding people on Facebook, especially if there's not a common name. It's usually easier to find someone who doesn't have a common name. I will also use any kind of phone numbers that we may have received from the clients. You'd be very surprised if you type in a phone number in the Facebook search field, what information comes up. Instead of trying to search for a common name, you put the phone number in. Generally, 50% of the time, you will get your borrower's Facebook or the student's Facebook page. Now, I'm going to pass this over to Bert real quick to talk about LinkedIn. I think you were going to.
I'll speak briefly to it. Here at ERS, we use social media to conduct searches, and we use several different media sites. Facebook, the two things that I would be concerned about from a compliance perspective are interaction with the consumer. We are view only, observe only within the public domain, and we never interact by any means with the consumer. The second thing I would be concerned about is leaving a footprint. So the way that we observe on Facebook, we do not leave a footprint that the borrower could trace that someone from ERS would be observing them. One thing, as an example, LinkedIn is different. If you log into LinkedIn and you identify someone's personal page or site, you will leave a footprint. So it's critical that if you're going to skip trace using LinkedIn that you not log in. But we can identify LinkedIn pages through Google searches. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to reiterate here.
Thank you, Bert.
Could you explain what you mean by a footprint?
A footprint is just a signature that you were there. So your login, so if you have a LinkedIn account and you search someone, your name or your account will appear on their page. They will be able to identify that a particular individual or a particular account was on their page at some point. That is particularly what we want to avoid when we're conducting in skip tracing activity.
One of the questions we discovered is, can you block your footprint?
For some social media sites you can, for some you cannot. And it also involves the sophistication of your internal equipment. Here at ERS, we have monitoring equipment that monitors all online activity by any ERS employee. And that technology allows us to block certain things on some particular websites. So I would say that it would be critical that you engage in partnership with your information technology department to identify what you can do and what you cannot do, and it would have to be by individual website.
I think they're talking about, and the person that sent the question, let me know if I'm not framing it correctly. If they're going into LinkedIn, can they block their footprint? And they can't because they're logged in, correct?
For the most part, I don't believe we have the ability. If you log into LinkedIn, we do not know of a way that we can block that footprint. If you search LinkedIn without logging in, that footprint can be blocked.
Okay. And then a question for you is there a, I'm sorry, what success level are you having with Facebook? And we have two full-time collectors here in the room. So can you guys talk to, without logging in and looking at their page, how successful are you with the data you're finding and being able to reach out to the student that has been lost?
Well, my success rate is about 80%. I can find a student on Facebook, and you'd be amazed at the information that you can find that's out there publicly. I'll pass this over to Joe to give his input, and then I'll kind of go into some detail as far as what I do on Facebook to get the results that I'm looking for.
I would say the same. I mean, I find many jobs from Facebook by just as simple as putting a phone number in to locate that individual and not on Facebook.
Thanks, guys. As Brandon here, as the Director of Operations, I would say these guys are exaggerating a bit. No, it's a joke. Dean, can you kind of let us know
Sure,
what information
sure.
that you see out there?
Sure. So you'll only see the information that the individual on the other end on their Facebook site will allow you to see. So yes, there are situations where a lot of information is blocked that you are unable to see. But there are other ways to kind of get the information that you're looking for from kind of another angle, if you will. So for example, I would type in somebody's name in Facebook, and right after the name, then you have the option to type in the city and state that they live in or the phone number that you have on file. You know, you pull up the page and you kind of read through the timeline. A lot of times there's information out there that they're talking about, you know, meeting up a friend at work, and maybe if they don't have their employer information right on the front page, you know, they talk about where they work in the timeline, and you can get your clues from that point. A lot of the information that I go through and where I find a lot of my students is, granted, if their friends are accessible, I pull up the friends and I just kind of glance at and look for multiple hits on employers. Like if I go through and scroll and look around and see that there are 5 people that work for ABC Electric, one would assume that those are their coworkers and possibly their employer, and that would kind of give me a place to start. So that's really one of the ways. It takes a little bit of time, but if the information is there and it's viewable to you publicly, then a lot of times I have a great success with finding people that way.
Great. So do we want to get into some Perkins talk-offs now, or continue on the skip tracing here?
Do you,
So, looks like we have a question here that do we call borrowers or students at work, and how successful are we at reaching them? So based on the information that Dean just provided the audience here, yes, we do call students at work, and we'll continue to call students at work until we're told not to. Once we're told not to, we document the type of the phone as a do not call and never call it again. So we adhere to that. So.
Yeah, I would just point out, this is Bert Coley, that there are certain states that have restrictions on calling places of employment. In Massachusetts, which is the most restrictive, you cannot call a place of employment without making a number of attempts to the residence first, and then you are restricted on the total number of attempts you can make to a place of employment during a month. And beyond that, if you continue to make attempts to the place of employment, you must send a letter to the consumer informing them that you will attempt to contact them at the at their place of employment. So there are a number of states that have some restrictions around how many attempts you can make to a place of employment and when you can make those attempts to the place of employment. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Does that apply to the institution the same as the collection agency? Should they work with their compliance people at the university to be sure they're following the rules?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend that you work with your compliance or legal team to identify what rules are applicable to you. And some of this is state specific. FDCPA, which is overseen by CFPB, is not specific to the creditors. However, many states have rules which are very FDCPA, they're very similar. In fact, they're just simply a copy of FDCPA rules. So it's important you know what state you reside in, what state you are attempting to contact a borrower in. And it's always the best practice to follow FDCPA-like rules.
one more question. Is it, so if you're the University of Illinois
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to collect an account in Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
is it Illinois law, or do I have to also be aware of the Missouri law? What should institutions be aware of?
Both.
Both.
You must comply with the laws of the state that you're calling to, but as a debt collection agency that's licensed in the state, or as a financial institution licensed in the state of Illinois, you must follow Illinois rules because that is a requirement of your license. For debt collections anyway, but you would need to research that as the type of institution you are.
So it is important to understand what rules your institution would be would need to follow when collecting with one of your students in another state. So that's another point to work with your compliance officer. And if you don't have a compliance officer at the university, you can always work with your collection agency client representative, and they can help you locate the information and know what to do. So once again, be very aware of where you're collecting if it's out of state and what additional rules and regulations you may have to follow. Okay. Yep.
Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll get into a standard Perkins talk-off or a communication with a student, defaulted federal Perkins loan, and then we'll go from there. So some of this is redundant, but I do want to start off, Joe, with Joe will be the collection specialist now, and Dean will be the student. And this opening statement is redundant, but I think what it does is drive the message home on some of the challenges we face as an agency and just getting past the initial portion of the call and go from there. So, Joe, if you don't mind starting out.
May I speak with John Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith, I must advise you this call may be recorded or monitored. For security purposes, can you verify the last four of your social security number as 1234?
Yeah, who's calling? Why are you calling me?
Well, to ensure I'm speaking with the correct party, please verify your date of birth.
So again, that second form of identification must be volunteered by the borrower. So right there, you can kind of get hung up, and it can be a little bit of a back and forth. But Dean's going to be very cooperative here. So go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, my date of birth is 8/14/1990. What's going on?
Thank you. My name is Joe Golars, and I am calling from Enterprise Recovery Systems. We are a collection agency contracted by the University of Illinois. I must inform you this is a communication from a debt collector. This is an attempt to collect a debt, and any information obtained is used for that purpose. I am contacting you today regarding your defaulted federal Perkins loan in the amount of $5,000.
What do you mean? I have a Perkins loan in default? All my federal loans are with Great Lakes Higher Education.
Your Stafford loans may be with Great Lakes Higher Education. However, your Perkins loan is with the University of Illinois as the lender.
Well, how do I get this out of default then?
You can consolidate your Perkins loan with your Stafford loans provided you go through the income contingent income-based repayment. This repayment plan will give you a reasonable and affordable payment based on your family size and your income.
Okay, so I believe we're going to do another poll question here. Is that correct? Does your institution utilize loan consolidation as a collection tool for your campus-based loans? So we'll allow for that to take place, and then get back into the consolidation process. So for those of you that aren't familiar and do have federal Perkins loans that are in default, consolidation is a great tool to get the student out of default and combine with their other student loans. It's important that you explain the benefits of loan consolidation thoroughly and that the student understands before we proceed. So as of last year, the Title IV approved servicers changed hands from the William B. Ford program back to the Title IV approved servicers, the TIBAs as we all call them. And the application for the most part is set up online as we walk the student through the consolidation process online. So again, explain the benefits of loan consolidation, eligible for more financial aid, They qualify for a deferment or forbearance with their servicer the remaining time. They're allowed to register or re-register at the school, and they can reduce their monthly payment through an income contingent or income-based repayment. Also, they may qualify for public forgiveness depending on their field. So, Dean?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd like to consolidate my loan.
Excellent. I can walk you through the online application process through studentloans.gov. Do you have access to a tablet or laptop at this moment?
Yes. Let me get it.
So again, explain the process online. How long it takes to complete the application is roughly 30 to 45 minutes. It takes about 60 days for it to fund and get out of default. And then this is where it's very important that the school work with the agency to have a process in place to be notified of when we have spoken to one of your students, so we could start the loan verification certificate process and try to expedite that. So as we walk the students through the online process at studentloans.gov, you'll be notified of a loan verification certificate or be asked to complete one. And what we like to do is go through our client relations department again and notify the school that we've done this, so you could be on the look for it. The sooner that's completed, the faster the account gets out of default, and to narrow that time frame is very important. So, Joe, you want to summarize that call?
You have successfully submitted your online application at studentloans.gov. During the next 60 days, your loan will be processed. I will continue to follow up with you through this process.
Okay, great. Thanks for your help.
So it's in looking at the poll, there's a percentage of institutions that are not using the loan consolidation process, and I would really encourage you to take advantage of this. As the first thing to look for when you start the collection process is, does the student have debt in any other federal program? And if they do, then they probably are a good candidate for loan consolidation. If they don't have any other debt and they only have a Perkins loan, I would recommend that you just keep that. There's no point to do a consolidation, really. But it's really critical to understand all of the rules that guide the consolidation program, and we have a slide here for you where you can go onto studentloans.gov, and there's a lot of Q&As and excellent information. But once again, your client rep at your collection agencies can provide information on that, and they can also once again provide webinar training for your team on how to use the consolidation tool. One of the questions we got is, do you advise the borrower students that they will lose their cancellation benefits?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and that's what I said. It's important to look at what other debt they have and balance that out and have them go and look at all of the information, because if they truly have substantial debt, it may be to their benefit to use the consolidation program and maybe forego the benefits because they may not even be eligible for the benefits. So really going through.
Once they're in default, they've lost the majority of their benefits. So by consolidating them into one loan, getting them into one payment is usually beneficial, and you got to work that out with the student. And there's a rehabilitation process that you can work out with the institutions as well. So you want to lay all options out there. This is just one option, and it helps get them out of default in the shortest period of time.
Do we have any additional questions on that part of the presentation on loan consolidation? As you can see, we're providing you with emails if you have any questions that you think of after we close the webinar session. As moderator, I'd like to take advantage of my ability to throw a couple questions back out on the table. As collectors and with all of your years of experience, maybe take a few minutes to talk with us about one of your most difficult borrowers and how you diffused the situation and how you were able to work through it and get them into a repayment status. That would be very helpful for the school.
Well, I deal with that on a regular basis. You know, not every student is cooperative, and I try to empathize with them. I try to understand their circumstance, and generally, once you do that, they're kind of on your side, and they know that you're there to help them through the process, and you know that you're there to kind of walk them through it. I do have a lot of people, after I do explain everything, that were reluctant at first to, at the end of the call, thank me for all of the time that I spent with them, and really were very appreciative of the knowledge that I gave to them during the call.
Yeah, it's just somehow finding them, you know, finding the way to say, you know, to make them know that you're helping them in a sense. You know, you're on their side. You know, don't kill the messenger, so to say, but, you know, you're trying to help.
Question I have for Steve. Could you talk a little bit about what training that your clients can request, how they might request it from ERS, and what that process might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Judy mentioned earlier in the presentation, is that we've got a brand new facility here in Woodridge, Illinois. We'd love to show it off. We'd love to have any local clients that want to come in. We can set up a training program for you. I'm sure if you'd like to sit with our compliance group as well, with Bert and his team, they'd more than welcome you. We can put you, any members of your staff, we can set up some FDCPA training, some collector training. They could sit in the same training that our collection staff goes through. So by all means, feel free to reach out to me or that webinars@ersinc.com email address and send us information. We can set up a time. We'd love to have anyone come and visit. Also, you would have access to a sales team and account managers, and we'd love to stop in, and you know, maybe we can grab one of our collection staff or Brandon or someone from our team to come to your campus, and we'd be more than willing to do a presentation there. I know Dean, you've gone to different presentations that we've done, so certainly we're more than willing to go to your institution as well.
Any other questions for us today? Well, we want to thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And once again, when the survey gets posted, if you can let us know what topics you're looking for as we start to build the agenda for the webinar, probably mid-October, let us know. And you can also send those to the address that's on the screen right now, the ersinc.com/webinar. I want to thank everybody for their time today. I know, like I mentioned earlier, it's an extremely busy time on your campuses. Wish you the best with your cohort default rates. With my 30 years of experience, I know that last few days of working your cohort was always very intense, and the agency people were here to help you get that cohort down. But thanking everybody that participated today. You provided some excellent information. And I encourage all of you to use the tools we talked about today, the social media, the consolidation, and I'll turn it over to Steve.
Okay. Well, thank you, Judy. I appreciate it, and want to thank Joe and Dean. You guys have very difficult jobs, and appreciate what you guys do, and you guys do a great job at it, so much appreciated. And thanks for taking the time to participate in this webinar. Hopefully our clients appreciated it. Thank you, Bert, for coming in and doing your compliance spiel. And thank you to you, Brandon, as well. I appreciate it. And then behind the scenes, we got some folks that never get mentioned, but Christy Morales, you do a great job of getting these webinars rolling for us and keeping the group on track. And Jeremiah Butler, you do a great job too. And thanks, Pat, for the IT support. So thanks to everyone in the room. This presentation will be archived, and it should be available at some point in time next week. I know if I say by tomorrow, I get yelled at. So I'll say next week it will be available. To go to the website and you can download it. And then as a reminder, there's a survey at the end of the webinar when this closes. So again, it's important just for us to get future topics. If you could just jot down a couple items that you're interested in hearing about, and it really is that kind of frames our future webinars for us. So appreciate it. So that wraps it up from our headquarters in Woodridge, Illinois. We're signing off, and again, thank you, and look forward to having you on our next webinar in October. Thank you.